Thelema, Coast to Coast, Show 31, August 12th, 2006. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Welcome to Thelema, Coast to Coast. My name is John Crow, and I'm the host of the show. Today is August 12th, and that is the Thelemic holy day of the Feast for the Prophet and his Bride. So I want to wish all my listeners a happy feast day. Although most likely you'll be getting this after the day of the Prophet and his Bride. But nevertheless, I hope you had a very wonderful and joyous feast day. Before getting into the podcast, I want to remind everyone there are 4 ways to contact the show. First is via email, podcast@thelemicoasttocoast.com. The website is www.thelemicoasttocoast.com. The show voicemail is at 206-600-4216. And of course, the postal service, Thelema, Coast to Coast, care of John Crow, P.O. Box 7045, Marietta, Georgia, Marietta, 30065. And since I just gave out the postal address, I want to remind everybody that if you send in a postcard to the podcast, in return I will send you a Thelema Coast to Coast bumper sticker. You can see a picture of the bumper sticker on the Thelema Coast to Coast website. Also, I've just recently updated the website with about a half dozen cards that were sent in. So if you want to go check them out, that would be great. Also, Bjorn, the card that you sent in did not have your address, so please email me your address so I can make sure to send you your sticker. Also, anybody who sends a postcard into the show, please include your address on the postcard so I'll be able to send you your sticker. And then also a message out for Kenneth in Dallas. Thank you for your email. I accidentally deleted it, though. If you would be so kind to please send it again. Now, there are a few other places on the web to find Thelema Coast to Coast information. Those with MySpace accounts might want to go and friend the Thelema Coast to Coast MySpace. It is at www.myspace.com/Thelema Coast to Coast. Also, there is a Thelema Coast to Coast Frapper map. It has about 330 people on it right now. You can get to that by going to the Thelema Coast to Coast website and clicking on the Frapper map and adding yourself. In the last podcast, Keith 418 was talking about confrontation and the lack of it in the Thelemic community. That resulted in a large amount of feedback, and I think that's great. I'm going to read a few of the emails that I received. There were too many to read them all. I think these do an interesting job of kind of representing the majority of the emails that I received. The first is from Tay. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. First of all, I want to say that your efforts with the podcast are a tremendous help to the Thelemic community, and I believe will definitely promote a current of change. Your dialogue with Keith 418 is valuable, and despite a minor flirtation with hubris, wink wink, I appreciate the clarity, sanity, and reason which you both represent. Regarding the issue in the community, I think you hit the nail on the head in the earlier podcast when you discussed people's ideology and the lack of realizing they have one. I see that idea as the crux of most issues. Admittedly, it's difficult to expect the will to cater towards an ideology. However, the will retaliate against such efforts with the relentlessness of the sea. Time after time, my castles of sand will experience their inevitable entropy. This process can potentially result in pain and even insanity. Crowley was crystal clear about the difference between black magic and the way. I believe people often undercalculate the type of sacrifices it takes to, quote, rise in a straight line, close quote. The major sacrifice is typically the very ideology we hold on to. Crowley said, humble yourself before yourself. Those who attract weakness will disperse, and the true adepts, who may be few, will endure. But your efforts to share some light on these subjects is much more effective than doing nothing at all. So thank you for your work. Loves the law, love under will. Tay. Thanks for the comment, Tay. I think these all go together. The ideology that we're talking about that often has to go is coming from more a normative society that is confrontation averse, that doesn't want to make sacrifices. We can see that today in how we're having a war on terror. But the country, unlike previous wars that was asked to make sacrifices during our wartime efforts, we're asked to do nothing but go out and shop and consume more. So we're not really making any kind of sacrifices. We're not asked to really participate. The war on terror and the war in Iraq are really kind of academic. They're almost like reality TV. People they're not experiencing these things. And this is all kind of underlying normative society and what Thelema kind of challenges. So I think you're correct that people try to make their will cater towards the ideology, and ultimately the will, which is informed by a transcendent reality, is going to supersede any kind of particular ideology, especially ones given by normative society. So thanks for that comment. The next one is from John. He says, "Hey John, I love the show. Thank you so much. You are doing a great service to the Thelemic community and the rest of the world. I've downloaded a few of your podcasts and I think they're awesome. I've been more inspired to carry on with the great work. I've started studying more often and am doing my Libre E exercises more often. I will download more podcasts as my bandwidth permits. Yeah, South African service providers. Sigh. Your show has helped increase the size of the flame within me. Could you please see if you could have a show discussing the essay Bereshith? I'm currently studying it and would be interested to hear what you and Keith 418 have to say. Thank you, John, and thank you, Keith 418, and everyone who's participated in the shows. John from South Africa." I'll have more to say about this, but actually we are going to have a show in the near future, probably in the next 2 shows, that will be touching on some of the aspects of Bereshith. But I'll get into that in the closing segment. So thanks for the email, John. I appreciate that. I'm glad you are doing your Libre E exercises and doing more of your practices, and the podcast could help you get motivated. The next email is from a freighter DMT. 93 John, I just wanted you to know that your show has helped me out a great deal with my magical path. I've been studying Crowley for about 10 years now and got into his work because of the book Hammer of the Gods. I noticed that in your interview with Eric Davis, you said that this book is a sort of gateway to the occult. Well, that is true for me too. In the past few years, I slowly became stagnant in my research and practice, and with life in general. Your show has restarted my drive to do the great work. I also thank Keith 418 for doing the Thelemic community a great service by putting the fire directly under the ass of slothful types like me. So thanks, Keith 418. I would like to hear more from him about the Goetia and some lectures on ceremonial magic. I've recently made contact with the Sora SD lineage of the AA, and think you helped me make that link in an indirect but very real way. Keep up the great work, John. 93, Freighter DMT. Well, thank you very much. These kind of last 2 emails represent kind of a series of emails that I've been getting lately, where people have been saying how the show has kind of inspired them to get out and doing work and looking at aspects of the Thelemic community that they haven't addressed before. Some people are joining the OTO and other Thelemic organizations presented on the podcast, and I think all of this is wonderful. Thelema is ultimately about doing. It's about the process of becoming and manifesting the will. And so that requires a lot of action. You can't sit and pontificate about the will and do nothing. It's all about action-oriented manifestation. And so I'm really happy that the podcast has been able to kind of get people moving in that direction. So please keep the emails coming. Got one more feedback. It is from an OTO brother, and he wants to talk about the aspects of confrontation in the last podcast.
Hey, John, 93. This is Pavel from Las Vegas. I just wanted to add on a little bit to the conversation on confrontation. As Keith was saying, if someone is being a pain at an OTO event, you can't really just come up to them and say, stop that, you're being annoying, because they'll simply respond, well, I'm doing my true will. And the only real solution to that is to say, do your true will while you're at home or not here. And while you're at the lodge or wherever, you have to act like a normal human being, which puts you in the ironic circumstance of saying, pursue your true will, but not at an OTO event if it's not within the confines of social norms. So I'm not sure what the solution is, other than to say that at an OTO event, you have to submit your will to the will of the lodge to have an orderly meeting. And it's just maybe the true will concept is not compatible with confrontation, as Keith was pointing out. I just thought I'd add that on. Great show, love hearing Scholar, and look forward to the next one.
Thanks for the voicemail. I really do appreciate the voicemails. I'm going to have to disagree with you, though. I don't think that they're actually incompatible. The reality is that doing your will requires, as Crowley says in Magic Without Tears, about 90% of Thelema is discipline. And if you're going to be active with the OTO, then you have to conform to the regulations of the order. And this means conducting yourself in a certain way. If you're doing your will and you want to do only your will, that means you have to discipline yourself to not do a myriad of other things. If you're going to be a great painter, that means you have to paint. And that means you're going to have to work at painting, and you're going to have to practice it and discipline yourself to sit for long periods of time painting and doing all the things that are associated with painting. Prep, drawings, various things. Paintings are not just going to appear themselves. You have to work for it. You have to discipline yourself. And while you're doing that, you can't be doing a bunch of other things. You can't be going out and running around and traveling and this and that. If you're painting, you must be sitting and you must be painting. And the same thing as being with the OTO. If you're going to be at an OTO event, then you must regulate yourself in accordance with the OTO regulations. Now, if you say it's your will to be in the order, well, then that means you have to accept the responsibility of doing all the things and disciplining yourself to be in congruence with the regulations. So it's not against the will for someone to say, well, you have to sit down and behave yourself. Now, if somebody is at the OTO and they say, well, it's my will to take drugs and be crazy and act inappropriately during the Mass or something like that, well, then you have to point out to them that they are incorrect about one of two things. It is either their will to be there, and if it is their will to be there, then they need to conform to the environment, or if it's their will to act the way they're acting or could be acting, then they need to do that elsewhere. And that they're having a conflict of understanding their will, and they need to go resolve that, and they should go resolve that elsewhere and stop bothering people. So really, it's not that difficult. It's all about discipline, and it's all about responsibility. So I hope that has helped kind of clear up some of those ideas. If someone says, well, it's my will to do X, and that X is conflicting with their larger will, then there may be a misunderstanding of will, and people may have to point that out. Okay, so that is the listener feedback. Please keep them coming. I received a whole bunch of other ones, but it would be very time-consuming to go through each and every one. So please keep them coming. One of the newer projects that I have is I've had a personal blog on the LiveJournal system for quite a while, and that has been had a security level, so it wasn't publicly available. I have since created a new public blog for myself. It can be accessed at www.thelema.nu. That's .nu. And that is now my personal public blog where I write a lot about these ideas of Thelema. I'll also be posting notices about the podcast and so forth. So I encourage people to go and check out what's there and comment and so forth. Also on the right-hand side of the website, you'll see a place where you can enter your email address, and whenever I post something to the blog, it will send out a notification. So If you're interested on what I'm saying and to find out quickly, go there and put in your email address. Also, there's a place where you can register